I like to say I fell into it, then I fell in love with it, selling on Amazon. It's a really good business to get into when you kind of want to be scrappy and a founder and, figuring it out. Correlations between advertising and impact on organic market share, which is super unique to the platform. The one thing that has really changed is the amount of control that we have over where the ads appear, how the ads appear. It's not that the strategy is inherently bad. It's not that the strategy doesn't inherently work. It's just, it's not curated for what you guys actually need. So people end up just following it blindly and then end up with the results they don't want.
Welcome to the Afluencer Podcast. We're talking Amazon advertising today. We know we have a lot of brands who are looking to increase their presence on Amazon, scale up, and we asked the best in the business. We've got Elizabeth Greene here. She's the co-founder of Junglr, her own agency. She's an expert in Amazon advertising and scaling up from kind of that 7-figure to 8-figure mark. So looking forward to picking your brain today, Elizabeth. So welcome. And can we start maybe your story behind Junglr? What led you to start your own company?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great origin story of, I like to say I fell into it, then I fell in love with it. So how we got into it is back in the day selling on Amazon. Don't do that currently, seeing as the agency takes up a lot of time, which is something I'm sure we'll get into when we talk nitty gritty Amazon advertising. I'm definitely a practitioner at heart, so I love these types of conversations. But it led into, okay, so I know this world of selling on Amazon. I have skills around, advertising. And then this was back in the day when people are just really looking for answers. So the one thing with selling on Amazon, especially 6-7 years ago when we got into it, it is because Amazon takes on a lot of the logistics and things. So, the shipping, the processing, a lot of the customer service aspects. It's a really good business to get into when you kind of want to be scrappy and a founder and, figuring it out. And one of the things to figure out is definitely the advertising. So there was a lot of people asking questions like, hey, how in the world do I do this? And this was back when there was a lot of Facebook groups. And so people would ask questions in there. I was in there, of course, to give and to get information as well. And it was like, hey, I've got answers to these questions. Okay, let me be super helpful and answer your questions. And it really just kind of snowballed from there. It led to somebody saying hey, do you do this? And I was like, I could. And I guess I do. And so, that led to a client, turns out. So it made me really, really focus in on it. And there's some really unique aspects to Amazon advertising, which means you have to look at it. I don't say have to, but it really necessitates looking at it in a more business-centric way. There's there is some correlations between advertising and impact on organic market share, which is super unique to the platform. And so really just started digging into all the ins and outs on that, and really, again, just fell in love with it, fell in love with the tactics, fell in love with really the strategy of it all. And just been going ever since.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. So how have things evolved, and where are they at today in terms of, I guess, and just in terms of high level, what's working from an advertising standpoint, what's delivering the ROI? Where do you usually start clients when they come on board and say, hey, let's check out these strategies first?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think the one thing that has really changed is the amount of levers and the amount of control that we have over where the ads appear, how the ads appear. There's a lot of more dynamic changes and things. Amazon advertising definitely has followed in the footsteps of Google, very OG. It was all right, all auto campaigns. And then, we have broad match, and then we have more manual stuff. And then wait, there's this ad type, and then there's that ad type. So it was back in the day, it was super simple, right? It's we have limited control, throw up an auto campaign. That works pretty well. Figure out what works from the auto, expand from there. And then it's really just been them layering on hey, there's this thing now. And hey, now we have this new optimization option for this ad type. And wait, there's this new thing. And oh, that changed. And so it's really just been the core and the fundamentals and the principles. I think honestly, on any pay-per-click platform, to me, good advertising is good ad spend management at the end of the day, bar none. So the things and like these new levers and these new options and these new optimizations are additional ways for us to be more strategic when it comes to managing and delegating that ad spend, really at the end of the day. So it feels like it's almost like drinking from a fire hose, and this is coming from somebody who's like, this is all I do, right? I can't even imagine new sellers getting into it now. But that's really what the development has been, is just new additional and tweaks to how we actually are able to almost optimize and adjust what is really like the core fundamentals.
Yeah, I hear you. From the Google analogy, I used to use the OG, right? And I had my own campaigns for my own companies, and at some point had an agency kind of take it over. And there was that point in which I went back into the account and I regret, like my head hurt just looking at what was there now. And I'm like, what happened to, and like you said, at its core, it was the same, but there were so many freaking levers on top of it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep talking high level in terms of strategy, and I'm just gonna let our agency person handle the ins and outs of it, because there's just so many things. You almost have to be staring at it, I think, all day, every day, like you do. And even then, I mean, it's a challenge to keep up, but I can only imagine someone wearing 25 different hats. And then this is one of them in terms of managing their advertising. What do you see in terms of the common mistakes? You mentioned the ad spend. So is that one of them where, hey, we're spending and we're not necessarily tracking our ROI, or maybe we're keeping stuff too broad? What do you see in terms of someone with good intentions, but maybe things aren't working for them? What are kind of the common mistakes?
I would say this is the biggest mistake, and this is something that I'm really trying to talk about more publicly, because it's something we do in our interactions with our brands. And when I hear a lot of people talk about ad strategy or what is the biggest problems, or someone will take a great strategy, I think we've all been guilty of that, right? Like you go on YouTube, you're like, all right, I need to figure out how to do this. And then like you follow the steps and you're like, wait, that's not what I wanted to happen. And so a lot of those like that disconnect, what I find is really not working backwards from goals, and not even necessarily like what is it that we're trying to achieve, but like, what are we trying to achieve because this is what I need for my business. There's a lot of like Amazon sellers, because a lot of and I work with a lot more like founder-led brands and things. So I'm thinking it, for more that like boots on the ground, scrappy, DIY, make it happen, move quickly, break stuff. Like I love working with them, but a lot of times we get so focused on like this is an Amazon business, and it's like you forget, like there's this whole world of like good solid business principles that like really need to be brought into really what you're doing with anything in terms of business. So what I find is it's blanket applying these like best practices, or this is what somebody told me is like the best way to go about that, without factoring in what I actually need from a business perspective. Like, for example, I had a conversation with a brand. It was more of a consulting call, and I'm talking about like, okay, what are you trying to do with the advertising? How can I help? What is it that you're looking to do? And he's like, oh, I want to grow sales. I want to like 4x this Q4. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Cool. Why? Like, no one asked the why question. It baffles me, really. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. Why do you need to achieve that? Oh, because actually my business is in jeopardy. I haven't made profit in 2 years, and I'm hoping that an increase in total sales volume is going to save me. And I'm like, well, what happens if the profit, like what happens if you hit that 4x, but you don't hit the profitability? It's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to find investors, and I might have to sell one of my investment properties to fund the business. I'm like, by the way, does your current agency realize like you're in jeopardy of potentially going out of business? And all they hear is, oh, he wants 4x in sales. Well, I can do that, but the ad strategy to get there is probably not a profitable one. And so I was like, hold up, like maybe you should talk about focusing on the sum of their number first, and like get really, really specific. So I find if we like, when I can get the full context of the business and like what is going to make sense to you from like a business perspective, then we can talk about the ad strategy, because I have way better perspective. Because if you came into me today and were like, hey, I need a 4x in business, Absolutely. Let's go with that strategy. Let's go aggressive. Let's push on the keywords. Let's push for more market share. By the way, we're going to need more ad spend, right? Like, it's a push. But then if you're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to go out of business in like 3 months if I don't sell a property. I'm like, okay, so maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it. But because I lack the context of what it is that you actually need, I'm not going to be able to advise you correctly. And so that's the disconnect that I find. Most ad strategies, if someone's putting something on YouTube or they're having, it's not that the strategy is inherently bad. It's not that the strategy doesn't inherently work. It's just, it's not curated for what you guys actually need. So people end up just following it blindly and then end up with the results they don't want. And I'm like, it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just you didn't know how to curate it based on what you need for your business.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I mean, there's growth, but then there's profitable growth, right? And growth is kind of easy to an extent, right? Like you said, you can just spend more and drive more, right? And you can get there. Versus if like that guy sounds like he needed profitable growth, or he needed maybe profits first before even worried about the growth side of it. If you're just spending $2 to get one, and I mean, a lot of these platforms, Google's the same way, right? Facebook, they'll all take your money gladly, but getting there profitably. From a competitive standpoint, Amazon's obviously highly competitive. You've got someone coming in, new, crowded marketplace. Where do you look in terms of helping differentiate? Are you doing more longer tail keywords? What are you doing in terms of, hey, your competition is here, I could get you there, but it's gonna be really expensive to get you there. So maybe we focus over here where there's less competition, we can do a little more profitably. What are some of the techniques you do in these types of competitive situations?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first step, what I find, is really just getting a lay of the land in terms of what does the search market look like. So you talked about more long tail keywords, right? Not as many people typing in several different words to find their thing versus 2 or 3, right? So that's going to be more search traffic typically is directed to those more short tail keywords. It's a little bit different on Amazon, seeing as they actually have their autofill. So a lot of times you'll find, by the way, if you ever see a long tail keyword with insane search volume, you're like, who in the heck is typing in 8 different, keywords or terms to find something? It's really because of autofill. And once that autofill switches, all of a sudden you have a keyword that goes from 30,000 search volume to 0 overnight. Those things happen. So you definitely want to pay attention to this thing. But it's really just being getting an idea of, what kind of market are we looking at? What are our options? What is our playground? Because there are certain categories where there might not be much search volume in the long tail. So you have less options to go with. A lot of times people get into categories that they'll talk about oh, this is a really competitive category. There's lots of competition here. Those can be difficult, but if there's a wide variety of search traffic, you actually have almost more options in those types of categories. So sometimes it's even a little bit easier in terms of the advertising, but it's getting a lay of the land. It's what are my options? How can I play this? Is there a creative way to play this? Do I have less options? What's my lay of the land? And then again, I always like to connect it back to business goals. So what does the cash flow look like? What can we invest from an ad standpoint? Obviously, you talked about growth, right? If we can throw more ad dollars, very classic, whoever can pay most to acquire the customer wins. It's very much true in terms of Amazon advertising. The other thing is that it is a pay-per-click platform when we're talking on-platform advertising. And so with Amazon advertising, again, on platform, I'm not talking DSP and other things like that, but you're harnessing search traffic, you're not generating it. You really don't generate demand on Amazon. The reason why the platform is so lucrative to sell on is because Amazon's really done that work for you in a lot of ways of building up their platform as an authority place to purchase. And so all of that search traffic comes into the platform. We're looking to get eyeballs on our product from that search traffic. So once you have, again, we have our lay of the land, we know how we're going to play it in terms of what does our ad budget look like, what's our investment potential, then you sort of curate that strategy based on potential and then budget and business goals, and then you start there.
You doing anything with affiliates or influencers or creators or anything in terms of then scaling those types of efforts?
Yeah, so not in our agency specifically. Amazon does like it actually has some really interesting partnerships now they're doing with like TikTok. I'm interested to see where that goes. They recently released where so you could always run ads on TikTok and then have them translate back, to your Amazon store. But it was like they had to go to the Amazon store, where now they're looking at a partnership where me as a shopper, I would have to click on the ad, be able to link my account. Once my account's linked, I can make a direct purchase from actually inside the app, which I think is really interesting, keeping it ear to the ground there. Again, not something we run in-house, but is definitely, I think, a huge potential for Amazon sellers to drive traffic. Again, more that demand traffic, less harnessing, Amazon-centric traffic. They do have a creator program. Again, it's not something we do in-house. For us, we have partners we work with if brands are interested in that. They're trying to, like, Amazon itself, and this is something I find very interesting, platforms in general, is, so like Facebook, for instance, right? They've tried like Facebook stores and other things, but like it's inherently sort of like a social media platform. People go there to be entertained, not necessarily to purchase. Amazon sort of has that opposite problem where people go there to purchase, not to be entertained. And they've tried to do some things to like they have Amazon posts, they try to do like Amazon Live. There was like more of a video feed they were trying for a time, and it was like, to be honest, TikTok I think is kind of getting there, but I don't really see any platform fully embracing we have the entertainment and we also have the purchasing power in the same platform. And so we'll see. I know Amazon's trying to crack that code. We'll see if they do.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. I mean, that's why Amazon is so successful, right? Like you said, like they've got all this trust.
Yeah.
I feel like if I need a refund, it's like I get refunded before I hit the submit button. Like there's like no questions. It's such a great shopping experience, and it's been that way for so long, and that's why we trust it, right? Is use it, but you don't necessarily go there. And even Prime Video, if you want to watch a football game or something, it's a different app. I know it's I say it's on Amazon, but I'm not going to Amazon to watch that. It's Prime. If you're watching shows or streaming, right, it's the Prime. Yeah, so it's kind of like its own lane. On a work-life balance standpoint, Elizabeth, am I reading my show notes right? So we wanted to talk about being an entrepreneur and being a parent. You've raised 6 children with while growing your agency?
In the process of currently raising.
Yeah, that's wild.
We'll see how the social experiment turns out in,
okay.
10-15 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. How what are some of your secrets in terms of balance? I mean, I have the 2 kids, and it feels like it's crazy. I mean, how have you been able to kind of manage that on the agency side, family standpoint?
I would say first off, immense amounts of support, both just like practical support as well as just a lot of I don't know, there's a little support like emotionally, mentally, like having people who are kind of in your corner, who understand the way that you do things. My husband's very, very good about like, if I want to work crazy hours or I want to work sporadic hours or I'm in and out or wherever, there's not really like a judgment around that. Although obviously it's having my kids. I love being around them. I think that's one of the things that I like about this business is, I work from home. So for me, I guess how I've gone about it is my life is like very integrated, meaning it's kind of all one of the same. So like I work from home, I have a home office. Again, it works for me. I know it drives some people crazy, but it works for me. I like it. And then the kids are all home because we homeschool as well. So the interactions with them, they can be sort of, they come in the morning and say hi, or, and in between calls, I can go out and see them, so I do have the flexibility that way, which has been really good. And then I guess the other thing that has worked well for me, and again, something that I enjoy, so I've kind of crafted my life this way, might drive other people crazy as well, is just like I find it valuable to sort of strip away the things that are unnecessary, or maybe I like to say like 2 kids, you still kind of care because you have the capacity to. After you reach 3 and by 4, it's like that doesn't matter to me anymore. I mean, like my kids dress themselves, which is most kids do, but like if they go out looking a little bit questionable at this point, I'm like, you know what, they're dressed and they're fine and they have shoes on, like we're good. So I guess it's a little bit of like just giving up of the things you realize, like control the things you can and let go of the things you can't really.
Right. Yeah. It's an old school approach, right? We used to have the bigger families and you would grow up and the families of 4, whatever used to be common, right? And then when family that size, mom does what she can, and usually it's more of a traditional role. And we're looking back, right? So dad's working and then nobody's working from home. So not your setup, and then you're just kind of getting on with it. But that's very cool to have everything integrated during the day where you can see everyone throughout the
I enjoy it.
That's awesome. Cool. I'll get you out of here on this one, Elizabeth. So looking into your crystal ball, what do you see next from the Amazon platform? You mentioned how they're kind of looking to integrate maybe the eyeballs with the advertising, but what do you see coming down the pike that you're keeping an eye on? The TikTok was very interesting. What else do you have sort of your ear to the ground on the Amazon advertising side?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'm keeping ear to the ground on is just how they're going to try and offer options of advertising that really we hadn't before. So one of the other things that they've released, which it's beginning stages. And again, for context, I work with a lot of founder-led brands, which tends to be a little bit more conversion rate focused, meaning, they're less more like brand awareness. Depends on the brand. But they do have some like TV ads. So you mentioned, like watching Amazon Prime, that opens a whole option in terms of the advertising. And so Amazon's actually rolled that out. It's very accessible. It's right inside Ad Console. Pretty much anyone can run them. Now, conversions, if you're like have some scrappy, really crappy video, you have the option to run it on, Amazon Video if you want to right now. Not as many people are focused on that, but they've opened, what they're doing is what I'm noticing is that they're continuously sort of decentralizing these types of advertising that traditionally had been almost inaccessible to smaller brands. I mean, like TV ads, can you imagine even like 10 years ago was like the amount of budget and resources you have to put behind running a TV ad. Now, I mean, again, is the conversion rate probably going to be there if you have like a crappy slideshow? Probably not, but you can run it.
That's
and
cool.
It's going to cost
the fact that you can do it's pretty cool.
I believe last time I checked, like the ad budget per day, they recommend a couple $100 if you can, but you can run it for like $15-20 a day.
Amazing.
I mean, like ridiculous. So that I'm really, really excited for, just to see. I know they have some really interesting things in the works. And then the other thing that I'm really enjoying the way they're also releasing is Amazon, say last couple years, has really started releasing a lot of first party data around like competitor metrics and category metrics. So before it used to be like, am I keeping up with the market? Do I convert as well as the competition? I don't really know. It's kind of a black box. I can, there's third-party apps that sort of like look at your sales and others and can kind of have an idea, but there wasn't like, am I falling behind the market in terms of how I'm competing? And they're continuously releasing more and more data around that, which I find super amazing, because then we could say like, hey, yes, we're keeping up with the market. We aren't. And if we aren't, then that becomes, okay, well, how do we optimize for that, right? Where before it was like, I think we kind of are, I hope, fingers crossed, and just hope your sales will go. So I'm really, between those two things, getting more options to like ads that haven't been accessible before, and, just the continuous release of new data points to sort of benchmark how we're doing. I'm pretty excited for the future.
That is very cool. So in terms of keeping up with that stuff, Elizabeth, how can brands reach out to you? How can they get in contact with you and just follow you in terms of your thoughts? I saw you got a lot going on LinkedIn. We'll make sure we get the link to your LinkedIn profile down here in junglr.com. What are other good ways for everyone to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn is definitely going to be a great way. Always happy to get a DM if you're interested. And if you're interested in working with us, definitely the best place to connect would be the website. There's ways to reach out and book a call. Other resources that I'm putting out, we do have a YouTube channel where I go live every single Thursday. So I did it today as well. Basically showing up for an hour at answering any and every advertising question thrown at me. So that's always a fun one. I work to keep up with that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Cool. We'll get the link to your YouTube channel here as well as LinkedIn and Junglr.com. So Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a real fun Amazon advertising conversation. Great. Thanks again.
so much.